There's one thing we probably all do. Every time someone suffers, we reach for an answer. Maybe God is teaching you something. Maybe there is a hidden sin you need to deal with. Maybe your faith is not strong enough. Maybe God is just testing you and it will be over soon. Maybe everything happens for a reason. These answers get offered with kindness. They come from people who genuinely care. They are delivered in hospital rooms and at gravesides and over coffee when someone is falling apart. And almost every one of them appears in the book we are studying today, the book of Job. Not as wisdom, as the thing God says is wrong. Job is one of the oldest books in the Bible. And the question it is asking, a question most of us may have felt at some point, is not, why does suffering exist? The question is simpler than that, and harder. Can a person love God when God gives them nothing? That is what this book is about. And the answer it reveals, after 38 chapters of the most honest, most painful, most searching writing in the Bible, is not what anyone expected, not what Job expected, not what his friends expected, certainly not what the adversary expected. Before Job loses anything, there is a scene in heaven. Job 1 verses 6 through 12. The members of the heavenly court come to present themselves before God, and among them, the adversary. In Hebrew, the word is ha-Satan, not a name, a role. It means the accuser, the one who brings charges. In the ancient Israelite world, the picture here is of a divine courtroom, and the accuser's job in that courtroom is to test the case. God speaks first. Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And the accuser's response is the question that drives the entire book. Does Job fear God for nothing? In other words, of course Job is faithful. Look at what he has. Look at his wealth, his family, his health, his standing. You have put a hedge around him and everything he has. Take it away, and he will curse you to your face. The accusation is not that Job is a hypocrite. It is something more subtle and more devastating than that. The accusation is that Job's faith is transactional, that he loves God because God has been good to him, that his faithfulness is really just gratitude dressed up as devotion, and that any person would abandon God the moment God stopped being useful. God says, "He is in your hands. Do not take his life," and everything falls apart. He looses everything, his donkeys, his sheep, his servants, his children, all 10 of them, dead. The house they were in collapsed on them during a feast. Now, this scene in heaven is crucial for understanding the whole book, because Job never knows about it. He never gets to read chapter 1 like we are right now. He does not know that his suffering is the subject of a question about the nature of human faithfulness. He does not know that God's confidence in him is the reason for the test. He is sitting in the dark with no information and no context, and everything he loved gone. And that, right there, is the most honest thing the book of Job does. It refuses to give Job the comfort of the cosmic explanation, because in real life, when suffering arrives, you do not get the explanation either. You are sitting in the same dark that Job is in, with the same missing information. Now, let's talk about the 3 friends who make everything worse. When Job's 3 friends arrive, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, they do something remarkable. They sit with him in silence for 7 days. 7 days, without saying a word, because they can see how great his suffering is. That is the best thing they do. Everything after it is a disaster. Job breaks the silence first. Chapter 3. He curses the day he was born. He asks why he did not die in the womb. He uses the language of complete desolation. Why is light given to him who is in misery, and life to the bitter in soul? He is not performing grief. He is in the middle of it. raw and honest and not trying to sound spiritual. And then the friends speak. And they say, across chapters and chapters of beautiful poetry, essentially the same thing in different ways. Eliphaz: God is just. The innocent do not suffer like this. Therefore, you must have done something. Bildad: God does not pervert justice. If your children died, they must have sinned. If you will seek God and repent, He will restore you. Zophar: what you deserve is actually worse than what you have received. You think you are innocent, but God knows more than you do. 3 men, 3 speeches each, all saying the same thing. Suffering is punishment. Innocent people do not suffer like this. Therefore, Job is not innocent. And here is what is so important to understand about the friends. They are not stupid. They are not villains. They are sincere, educated, religious men who are applying the best wisdom available to them. And that wisdom, the idea that God rewards the righteous and punishes the wicked, that suffering is always connected to sin, was not wrong in general terms. Across the sweep of history, there is a connection between faithfulness and flourishing. The problem is that they are applying a general principle to a specific person as if it were a law with no exceptions. And Job, who knows he is innocent, who cannot find the sin that would explain what is happening to him, refuses to accept their verdict. He pushes back, sometimes with anger, sometimes with anguish, sometimes with the most searingly honest questions directed at God that appear anywhere in the Bible. Job 13:3. I desire to speak to the Almighty, and I wish to argue my case with God. I wish to argue my case with God. Job is not walking away. He is not losing his faith. He is doing something far more demanding. He is insisting on bringing his case directly to God, not through the friends, not through religious performance or pious acceptance, directly, honestly, with everything he has. And the book does not present this as faithlessness. It presents it as the truest, most demanding form of faith available. The faith that stays in the room even when the room is unbearable. Job's speeches are the emotional heart of the book, and most people skip over them because they are long and poetic and feel repetitive. But inside them are some of the very honest lines written about suffering and God. Job 7:20. Talking directly to God, he says, If I have sinned, what have I done to you? You who see everything we do. Why have you made me your target? Have I become a burden to you? That is not a man who has lost his faith. That is a man who is so convinced of God's reality and presence that he is furious at the silence. You cannot be furious at someone who does not exist. Job's anger at God is a form of relationship. It is the anguish of someone who believes deeply, genuinely, and cannot understand why the God he believes in is not speaking. Job 19:25-27. This is the moment the book pivots. In the middle of all the anguish, Job says, I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I myself will see him with my own eyes. I, and not another. I know that my Redeemer lives, out of nowhere. In the center of the darkest book in the Old Testament, a declaration of absolute confidence in ultimate vindication. Not a vague hope, a certainty. My Redeemer lives. I will see God with my own eyes. Whatever happens to this body, I will stand before him and see him. This is the line that makes Job's faith extraordinary. It is not faith that exists because everything is going well. It is faith that exists at the bottom of the pit when everything has been stripped away, with no explanation and no relief in sight. This is what the adversary in chapter 1 said was impossible. Job is proving otherwise. Not by feeling calm, not by performing patience, by refusing, in the middle of everything, to let go of the one thing that has not been taken from him. His conviction that God is real and that he will one day see him. By the time the friends have finished their speeches, all three of them, all three rounds, nobody has said anything that helps. Job has refused to accept their verdict. They have run out of arguments because Job is righteous, and then a fourth man appears, Elihu. He has been sitting there the whole time, listening, not speaking, because he is young and the others are older. But he has been getting angrier with every speech. Chapter 32, verse 2. He is angry at Job for justifying himself rather than God, and angry at the three friends for having no answer and yet condemning Job. Elihu is the character most people skip entirely. He gets 4 chapters, and a lot of readers treat him as filler before the main event. But Elihu says something that none of the other 3 said. Job 33:14-16. For God does speak, now one way, now another, though no one perceives it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on people as they slumber in their beds, he may speak in their ears and terrify them with warnings. God speaks, even when people cannot perceive it. Elihu is not defending the friend's position. He is saying something different. He is saying that God's apparent silence is not absence, that the suffering Job is in is not punishment. Elihu is clear that Job has not sinned to deserve this. But suffering can be the place where God is most actively present, even when that presence cannot be felt. He is also the one who prepares Job and the reader for what is about to happen. Chapters 36 and 37. Elihu describes the coming storm, the thunder, the lightning, the display of God's power in the natural world. He is the advance notice. And then the storm arrives. Chapter 38. The moment the whole book has been building toward. God speaks to Job out of the storm. And what he says is unlike anything in the entire Bible. He does not explain the suffering. He does not answer a single one of Job's questions about why. He does not justify himself. He does not reveal the scene in the heavenly court. He does not tell Job about the adversary or the test or the question that started everything. Instead, he asks Job questions. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me, if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place? Have you comprehended the vast expanses of the earth? Tell me, if you know all this. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? Who gives the ibis wisdom or gives the rooster understanding? Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? Question after question. Chapter 38, Chapter 39, Chapter 40, Chapter 41. The speech goes on for 4 chapters. The natural world in its entirety, the foundation of the earth, the storehouses of snow, the paths of lightning, the habits of wild animals, the ostrich that abandons her eggs, the warhorse that charges into battle, the hawk that soars and spreads its wings toward the south. God does not answer Job's questions. He answers Job. And this is the thing that makes this book unlike any other. The answer to suffering in the book of Job is not an explanation. It is an encounter. It is the presence of a God so vast, so comprehensive, so intimately involved in the running of a universe that makes the scale of human understanding visible for what it is, real but limited, genuine but partial. When God asks, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation?" he is not mocking Job. He is not rubbing Job's face in his smallness. He is doing something far more important. He is showing Job the difference between the view from inside a single human life and the view from the one who holds every single sparrow and every mountain goat and every wave of every sea in active, attentive knowledge. Job asked, "Where are you?" God answered, "I am here. I have always been here. I know the Pleiades, and I know you. I set the boundaries of the sea, and I set the days of your life. You do not have the full view. You were not there when the foundations were laid, but I was, and I am still here. That is not a dismissal. That is the most intimate thing God could have said. Job 44-5. After the first speech from the storm, Job responds, I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more. He does not collapse in shame. He does not retract his honesty. He puts his hand over his mouth, not because he was wrong to speak, but because he has now encountered something so much larger than his questions that the questions have shifted. Then God speaks a second time. More questions, the hippopotamus, the leviathan, the full power of the natural world in all its controlled wildness. And Job 42:5. The line that is the emotional peak of the entire book. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Before the suffering, Job knew about God. He had inherited a description of God, faithful, powerful, just, good. He believed it. He lived by it. He was, as the first verse says, blameless and upright. But he had not seen, he had heard, and now, on the other side of the worst year of his life, with no explanation given and no injustice reversed yet, he has seen. The encounter itself changed something that the comfort of a previous life never could have changed. Job does not say, now I understand why this happened. He says, now I have seen you. And then God speaks to the three friends. Chapter 42, verse 7. This is a startling moment in the book. I am angry with you and your two friends, because you have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has. As my servant Job has. The man who argued his case with God, the man who refused to accept the friend's verdict, the man who said, have I become a burden to you, and I wish to argue my case with God. The man who was angry and honest and relentless in his refusal to perform acceptance he did not feel. That man spoke the truth about God. And the three friends, with all their correct theology, all their beautiful speeches about God's justice and God's power, did not speak the truth. Because they applied their understanding of God to Job as if they knew the full picture. They did not. And God holds them to account for it. At the end of the book, Job's fortunes are restored. His wealth is doubled. He has 10 more children. He lives another 140 years. He sees 4 generations of his descendants, and a lot of us find this ending troubling. It feels too neat, too transactional, as if God is paying Job back for passing the test. But there are 2 things about the restoration that deserve careful attention. The first is what the restoration is not. It is not presented as the point of the story. The friends spend 35 chapters telling Job that restoration is what faithfulness earns, that the equation is, obey God, receive blessing. And the ending does not vindicate that reading. Job is restored not because he kept the deal. He is restored because God is generous, not because Job earned it. The restoration is grace, not payment. The second is what it cannot replace. Job 42 does not say his grief disappeared. It does not say the 10 children he lost were forgotten or that the new 10 erased them. The restoration does not undo the suffering. It follows it. The 2 things exist together in the same life, the valley and the abundance that came after it. That is not a tidy resolution. It is a real one. And Job is described in those final verses the same way he is described in verse 1. The same man, not a broken version, not a reduced version, the man who went through all of it and came out the other side. Still him, still there, still in relationship with the God who spoke to him from the storm. Here is what the book of Job is actually saying. It is not saying that suffering always makes sense. It does not. Job never gets the explanation, and neither do we. It is not saying that suffering is always punishment. Job is explicit proof that it is not. It is not saying that if you hold on long enough, everything will be restored and the equation will balance. The book does not promise that your specific story ends like Job's. What it is saying is this. The question the adversary asks in chapter 1, does anyone love God for nothing, or only because of what God provides, is the question the whole book answers. And Job answers it not by feeling peaceful, not by performing acceptance, not by agreeing with his friends that he must have deserved it. He answers it by staying, by arguing, by saying, I wish to speak to the Almighty, by refusing to let go of the relationship even when the relationship was giving him nothing he wanted, by arriving at the pit of everything he had to give and finding, at the bottom of it, my Redeemer lives. The adversary said that kind of faith was impossible, that nobody loves God for nothing. Job proved it was possible. Not because he was superhuman, because he was honest. He brought everything, the grief, the anger, the confusion, the have I become a burden to you, and he brought it to God rather than away from him. And God's verdict at the end is that this, exactly this, was speaking the truth. The friends gave God beautiful speeches. Job gave God himself, and God preferred Job. If you are in the middle of something right now that has no explanation, no visible reason, no clear lesson, no satisfying answer to the question of why, the book of Job is not going to give you the explanation. But it is going to give you something more useful. It is going to show you that your anger at God is not faithlessness, that your where are you? Why have you made me your target? I wish to argue my case are not the words of someone who has walked away. They are the words of someone who is still in the room, still in relationship, refusing to pretend a peace they do not feel. The friend's mistake was not caring about Job. It was speaking for God when they did not have the full picture. And that mistake has been repeated in well-meaning conversations ever since. That is the friend's answer. And God said they did not speak the truth. The one thing Job does throughout this whole book that the friends never do is talk to God directly, honestly, without managing how it sounds. That is the practice, not the prayer that sounds faithful, the prayer that is honest. God, I do not understand this. Where are you? I wish to argue my case with you. And then staying, not walking away. God is not out of touch with your reality. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. That is what is on the other side of the staying, not necessarily the explanation, not necessarily the restoration, but the encounter. The presence of the God who knows the mountain goat and knows you, who was there when the foundations were laid, who speaks from the storm, who is here with you. If you have never read Job straight through, I'll invite you to do it this week. Read chapters 1 and 2 to understand the setup. Read Job's speeches. Let yourself feel the honesty in them. And then read chapters 38 through 42 slowly, very slowly. Those 4 chapters from the storm are unlike anything else in the Bible. God bless you.